Welcome back to the studio, guys, where you were always more than welcome. That time of year has come again, the time for cozy jumpers and an annual eye twitch. It is, of course, the festive season, and in this video, I've dug through the archives and I've come up with 5 DIY Christmas gifts that anyone can make, even with the bare minimum of tools. I've put links in the description to any tools and materials I did use. And if you have any questions, leave some in the comments. And before we get into it, I'd love to see your work. So if you do end up making any of these gifts, then please share them with me. I might even give you a shout out on social media. So you can either slip into my DMs on Instagram or Facebook, or tag me in a post. I'm just at Zebrano Woodcraft everywhere. So without further ado, let's get into it, man. So the first DIY gift idea I'd like to share with you is something anyone can do, and that is an adult colouring or activity book. Now you might be thinking, but Dan, I can't draw. But that doesn't matter. I'll show you in a second how you can make these without any drawing skills whatsoever. But if you can draw, then that is a massive bonus. So let me jump into my screen and I'll show you how to make one of these cool colouring books. Okay, so the first option is to use your own artwork to create the colouring pages. So you could pretty much just pop a picture that you've made into your scanner. I'd recommend using really bold, black lines. Pop it into your scanner, create a new scan. Okay, now when you've scanned it into your computer, save that. Okay, so we save that as a JPEG. Now to make this color bookable or colorable, I'm going to use a program called GIMP, which admittedly doesn't sound like the most wholesome of software, but it's basically a free image editing software. So open up GIMP. Create a new design with an A4 template. Make sure it's at least 300 pixels per inch, which is absolutely fine. I like to go down to the advanced options and change my background color to transparency. Just personal preference. Okay, so now we've got one basic layer, but I'm going to open up my artwork. So if I come into File, Open as Layers, and then I got my blood. Yeah. Okay, so open this. Shazam. Now this is a new layer. Okay. Okay. So I'll just use the resizing tool, which is this one up there, to resize that fit on the page, which is good. Press scale, bam. So now that the artwork is nice and resized, I'm going to use the zoom in tool just to kind of get into the details a little bit. There we go, just so we can see what's happening. Come out to colors, go down to brightness and contrast. I'm basically going to just turn the contrast up. 85. There we go. Slamming. So that is looking good. So you can see all the lines are nice and black now. Now if I go to the paintbrush tool, selected a black brush. I'm going to change this down to a size 8. Then you see these details, which, I mean, it doesn't matter too much because on this illustration, I mean, those little white marks in the black would technically be on the printed paper of the beer bottle design. But if you're like me and you're a little bit meticulous, then you can go in and just use the black paintbrush to kind of color in any of the missed marks. Look, it doesn't need to be perfect. It's a coloring book page. Alright, so then if I zoom back out again, all the way, blah, 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 blah. Alright, that's cool. Now, I'm going to take this fuzzy select magic wand tool. If you used Photoshop before, you're probably familiar with this tool. I'm just going to click on the white space outside of the design. Now you can see that an outline has come around kind of the main bit of the design. Then just press delete, slam. Okay. Select none. Right, so now we've got a design with transparency in the background, which is all really good. Okay, so now we can export this as a PNG file, export, and just type it as...
Put it into YouTube.
So that artwork now is ready to use as a colouring page for your friends, your family, whatever. But what if you don't have any drawing skills? Well, don't worry, I got your back covered. Check this out, I'll show you how to make cool colouring pages really easily and for free, okay? Okay, so I'm on a website called canva.com, which is basically like a graphic design website which you can use for free. Now, I'm going to create a new design. So if I click create design, and I'm going to use a template, A4 document. So this gives me a blank page. Now, basically, if you can't make cool drawings, then you can basically make really nice artwork anyway. You can just come into here, search for elements, search for something like I don't know, a mandala, just some kind of nice geometric pattern you can use. Most of these are for free as well. So look, if we just click on this, this appears. We can change it to black, and then just size this up to however you like. See if we can choose another one. This one's a really cool one. What about this? Bam! Look at that! Change that to black and white. Slam. Alright, lovely. Then you can just resize that to however you want. I don't know, just get creative. You can just like duplicate that layer and then pop another one kind of down here. And then duplicate that and then pop another one here. Chuck another one up there. I'll keep someone busy for a bit. Look at that. That's a colouring page. That's a colouring page already. Alright. So if that's going to be a page of the colouring book, let's see if we can give you a couple of other ideas of stuff that you can do. So if I just come into elements, and I don't know, we use... I mean, some of these mandala patterns are really cool. So if we just make this black and white and then size it all the way up. Just a cool, simple geometric design, and then, I don't know, you could just kind of come in, add some fonts, some lettering. Let's add some lettering. So if I type in something like jungle is massive. There we go. Now, I like to make this a really nice bold font, so I'd like to use this one called Anton. I think it's really attractive. And then if we just size this up to, I don't know, like 144 or something. There we go. Now I realize that isn't great because like the background is kind of very imposing. There's a few ways around this. You could do something fancy pants in an image editing software, but I've just got a little workaround that I like to do here. So if you duplicate the text, and then if you drag that over the top of the previous text, and then change the color to white, and then position that one backwards, then that's gone behind the other layer of text. And then click on this one again, click on effects, and click on hollow, and then that makes that text nice and hollow. So look, we've got a really nice geometric design there with some kind of bold typography. Super easy. You get really creative with that. So look, let's create another page and crack on. So I have completed my colouring book. I've added just some random pages of kind of patterns with text, just patterns on their own, you know, some kind of bits of artwork that I created from vector images like skulls and stuff. And you know what, I made this for my friends. They're all adults, so I've made it a little bit spicy, sprinkled in a few swear words here and there, or some phrases that me and my friends going to use on nights out and stuff. You know, you can get really creative with this. You don't necessarily have to just only use bits of artwork or fonts or, you know, lettering or whatever. You could make other things like crosswords, word searches, anagrams, you know, general quizzes and stuff. Just anything to, you know, keep them occupied while they're having a few drinks in the peace and quiet on Christmas Day. So, I've finished my colouring book. Now I'm just going to download this. So if I click this button up here, download as a PDF. 17 pages, really good. So if I just download that. Jungle is massive PDF. So if I open this, okay, and I should be able to print this now. So if I just go print, yeah boy. So once the pages are all printed out, you can either staple your book together, or if you're like me and your stapler is not very powerful at all, then you can use one of these, I don't know, little plastic binder things or a paper clip, whatever. It doesn't need to be high tech. At the end of the day, you're just making this for your mates. So, you know, you don't need to be super professional. But there are companies you can go to get an actual book printed. So I don't know, if you find that you have a natural talent for creating colouring books, then why not go into self-publishing? You might even make a bit of money. And so that's how I made this colouring book. Out of some of my own artwork, some free vector graphics, and just some basic font and typography. It's actually a pretty fun and cool project. You can get really creative. Like I said, you don't only have to use artwork for colouring book. You can add in, you know, crosswords, word searches, sudokus, anagrams, quizzes, whatever. Just get creative. And the good thing is with making this DIY gift is once you've made it once, you can print out more, so you can cover more friends' presents with less effort. Okay, and so for the next DIY Christmas present that anyone can make is one of these funky wooden phone cases. Now you might be thinking, surely I'm going to need a laser cutter and, you know, a bandsaw and all sorts of woodworking machinery. Well, no. For this one, all you need is a humble craft knife and a bit of patience. Okay, so to make one of these beautiful wooden phone cases is really easy. All you need is a sublimation phone case. So these are like rubber or plastic phone cases you can buy on eBay, and they're made for like printing custom designs on. So instead of printing a custom design onto the sublimation case, I just used a piece of raw unbacked wood veneer. The veneer I used was a walnut burl, a really beautiful wood, but you can get many different kinds of species. Just search for raw unbacked wood veneer, and 0.6 mil should be okay. So pretty much I just removed the aluminium part of the phone case and used that to draw an outline on the wood veneer. And then, when the outline was drawn, I just used a craft knife and my trusty metal ruler to cut the outline out. I just did this roughly and just kind of cut like a millimeter or two outside of my pencil line, just to make sure I had enough veneer to kind of cover the aluminium portion of the case. So these phone cases are really easy to find. Literally go to eBay or Amazon and type sublimation phone case. you know, for any phone that you require. I've made this case for my own iPhone 12, which I bought the other day. So when I had the wood piece cut out, I just went over the aluminium portion of the case and just kind of sanded the surface, and then I realized that it had this plastic film over the top of it, so I just went ahead and did a bit of ASMR for you guys to peel off the plastic from the case, and then I went over and roughed up the surface, roughed up the white surface with some sandpaper, just to make sure that when I put the epoxy resin on, they would have a nice surface to adhere to. So as I just mentioned, I used epoxy resin to glue the wood to the aluminium. This was just a 5-minute epoxy, like Araldite, so I just mixed it up on a piece of baking paper and then stuck the aluminium to the wood. Pretty self-explanatory. When that had dried, I removed the wood from the piece of baking paper and then used a craft knife again to kind of trim the edges to make sure that the wood was flush with the aluminium. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Hope so. So after a bit more trimming, I busted out the sandpaper and I sanded all the faces of the sublimation piece. So I sanded the wood through a few grits of sandpaper, starting at the lowest grit, so 320. Then I used a 400 and a 600 grit. Then I just went over and sanded the edges and the back of the aluminium as well, just to kind of make sure that all the surfaces were nice and smooth and everything would fit perfectly into the phone case. And for the back, I scratched that up with the sandpaper just to make sure that it would adhere to the case. When the wood was nice and finished, I just rubbed in a bit of cutting board oil, just mineral oil, just to kind of give it a little bit of protection and, you know, bring out the natural beauty of that wood. Who doesn't love walnut burl? When it came time to stick the wood into the case, literally just removed the plastic sticker from the back of the case, and then generally with these sublimation phone cases they have like a self-adhesive kind of backing, and so I just pressed the wood and the aluminium into the back of the case and it was stuck. And that's it. That is the easiest way to make a wooden phone case. No laser engravers required. All you need is a craft knife and some sandpaper and some elbow grease and some willpower. Alright, the next DIY Christmas gift that anyone can make is a wooden guitar pick. So this is a really simple, small woodworking project, and honestly I believe anyone can make one of these. In the video I'll show you I did use some bench tools to make the wooden guitar pick, but those are not necessary. I used a bandsaw to kind of rip the wood down to a 5mm width. But don't worry, if you don't have access to a bandsaw, you could just go onto eBay, Amazon, or your favorite wood supplier's website, and you can buy wood which is already either 3 or 5mm thick, which is plenty workable. I also used a scroll saw to cut out the shape of the wooden pick, but you don't necessarily need one of those either. You could just use a coping saw or a jeweler saw if you have one. So you can make this with entirely hand tools and sandpaper, and it makes a really great gift for any musicians or, you know, just people who like a little bit of rock and roll. So this is how you make a wooden guitar pick. Begin! So to get things going for this project, I raided my scrap wood box and chose a few nice hardwoods. For making guitar picks, you'd want to use hardwoods, so your walnuts, ebonies, rosewoods will all work. And for this I just chose a nice piece of walnut and sliced it up on the bandsaw until I had a piece that was about 5mm thick. To give me a guide for the shape of the pick, I used an existing Plectrum and traced around that with a pencil onto the wood. So then I can move on to cutting. So the first cutting method I'll show you is on the scroll saw. Just being careful, keeping my fingers out of the way, and I just trace the pattern with the scroll saw. Easy peasy. To get rid of those jagged edges, I moved on to hand sanding. Nothing complicated here. I just sanded through a few grits of sandpaper from 240 grit to 600 grit. I just worked in kind of nice tapers on the edges and just got it to a nice shape and a smooth feel. That's pretty much it. To finish it off, I just used a bit of mineral oil and just give it a few coats, let that sit, and the pick was done. And the next DIY Christmas gift that anyone can make is a beaded macrame bracelet or an adjustable gemstone bracelet. These are really simple to make. You won't need any power tools. You can make them on your kitchen table or in your living room. Literally, it's just a little bit fiddly. All you need is some beads, a cocktail stick, and a scissors to cut the string. These make wonderful gifts. You can make a lot of them, and people absolutely love these. So this is how you make a beaded, adjustable macrame bracelet. So first up, let's cover some supplies. First things first, you're going to need some beads. To make my bracelet, I used some of these lovely onyx beads, as well as some AAA grade tiger's eye. I don't know, I've just got a bit of a thing for tiger's eye. As well as a few smaller onyx chips. I like to use 8mm beads, and I like to use real gemstones. Some people think they have magic powers, but I just think that they look cool, and I like those natural vibes. The other main material is some cotton cord. So I've got two colours here, brown and a black, and they're both just thin enough to fit the holes on the beads. The main tool, a scissors. Then optional extras would include some sellotape, a ruler, a lighter, and some kind of awl or toothpick or pin to help with tying the knots. And this thing here, I just stole this off my girlfriend as I thought it makes me look more professional. So for the actual tutorial part of this video, I have switched microphones as I couldn't actually speak and do this at the same time. But the first step was to cut two pieces of cord at around 12 to 14 inches. And then I just tied a basic stopper knot in one end at about sort of 3 inches down the cord. Before threading my beads onto the cord, I used a lighter to singe the edge I just cut and just kind of manipulated that into a point. Then I stuck my cord down with a bit of trusty sellotape and started threading on my beads. So I have my beads all laid out nicely and just put them on in order, really. These were 8mm beads, as I mentioned earlier, and I found from experience that I needed about 21 beads in total to make the bracelet fit over my wrist comfortably. So when I put those beads on, I then tied another stopper knot in the end. Now, I always had trouble kind of getting that knot close down to the beads, and so I discovered a technique from a YouTube video where you can use a pokey thing. I used a toothpick to kind of tie that knot right close to the beads. It doesn't need to be too close as the beads still need to move around. The next step was to create the adjustable knot, and to do this I used a macrame square knot. So I took that second piece of cord I'd cut earlier and then secured that using a simple knot to the bracelet. This essentially left me with 4 cords. And so I started the knot with the cord over on the right hand side. I formed a letter P with the right hand cord and then placed that over the two cords in the center, and then using the left hand cord I threaded that kind of underneath the two center cords and then up through the loop of the P, and then tied that tight. And then I alternated sides, so I started my knot with the left hand cord. It's pretty difficult to describe how to do this in words, so I hope that the video kind of explains it to you. I normally carry on doing this for about between 10 to 16 reps, and I like to keep a nice even number of knots. When the adjustable knot was formed, I took the two strands of cord and then grouped them together and tied another stopper knot using my toothpick to get that knot nice and close to the adjustable knot I just made. I then used my little onyx chips and put those over the two cords that had just formed my adjustable knot, tied those with stopper knots, and then used a lighter to burn up the frayed ends of the knots and kind of secure the stones in place. And then for the two cords that had formed my original bracelet, I just popped some beads on those, tied little stopper knots in, probably about 2 to 3 inches at the end of the cord. And that was it, the bracelet complete. A nice, easy, simple project you can make with minimal tools. These make excellent sellers. Nice gifts. And these ones I think are, well, I think they're pretty manly designs. I love them. And the final DIY Christmas gift is a chalkboard, or a chalkboard with the option of adding a wine cork memo board as well. So these are really easy to make, pretty fun, and a great upcycling project. You can buy frames from a thrift store or charity shops for really cheap, like, you know, £1 or $2, a couple of dollars. And most good wood yards will be able to cut plywood to size for you as well. So you don't even need any saws to cut the plywood for the backing. But if you don't have access to a lumber yard with a saw, then you can just contact one of your carpenter friends with a table saw, and I'm sure they'd be happy to do it for you. So this is how you make a chalkboard, or a chalkboard with a wine cork memo board. So I started out with the frame, which, like I mentioned, got from a charity shop for about £2. You can pick these up at kind of car boot sales or thrift stores or even eBay. And all I did was bought the frame and then bought a piece of plyboard to fit in the back. I started out by removing all of the hardware from the back and removing the glass and the MDF. And then, after giving the frame a quick sand, I moved on to painting. For this chalkboard I used white and a grey paint, and I just put on 2 layers of grey and 2 layers of white with a simple paintbrush, making sure that I got into all of the details and I had a nice even coverage over all of the frame. And then all I did was use a bit of 240 grit sandpaper to distress the frame, and not too much, just to pick out a couple of the main details. With this done, I moved on to painting the chalkboard using just a standard chalkboard paint which you can get from eBay or Amazon. And I just put 2 layers on this one, as the chalkboard won't see heavy use, and with each layer I changed the direction of my brush strokes, just to make more of an even surface when the paint was dry. When the paint was dry, I just used a 400 grit sandpaper. I just went over the whole thing just to make a nice smooth writing surface, and then popped the plyboard back into the frame, added the hardware back on, and boom! There's my upcycled chalkboard. All that was left to do was hang it on the kitchen wall and enjoy it. Okay, so that is how you make an actual chalkboard. Really simple stuff. However, if you'd like to modify it slightly with a wine corkboard, pinboard, memo board, then this is how you do it. Next, it was time to cut some wine corks. My weapon of choice was this razor saw. It has extremely fine teeth and was really good at cutting the wine corks in half. So I just lined them up and just cut straight down the middle the best I could. And then I just repeated this process over and over again until I had a massive pile of wine corks. Then it was time to glue the wine corks into place. So I set them all out in a pattern on my chalkboard. I opted for a 2 vertical, 2 horizontal kind of alternating pattern, and all I did was put a bit of hot glue on the back of each cork and glued them into place. And when all this was done, I just peeled away any fluffy bits from the hot glue gun, primed the chalkboard with a bit of chalk, and that was it. Hang it on the wall, and now we have an awesome memo board for our kitchen. Thank you very much for watching. I know it's been a long video, but I hope it's inspired you to get crafty and creative this Christmas. You've learned how to make a DIY activity book. What else we learned? A wooden phone case, wooden guitar picks, a beaded macrame bracelet, and an upcycled chalkboard. There's a lot to take in for one video, so I hope that it hasn't been too overwhelming. Like I said, share your creations with me. I'd love to see what DIY gifts you've made at Zebrano, Woodcraft, everywhere. And yeah, follow me.